All right, so today we're going to be looking at matrices. We're going to be looking at how to add, subtract, and multiply them. Those are the three topics. So we are going to be looking at a rectangular array of numbers. An n by n matrix has going to have m rows and n columns. This is known as the dimensions of the matrix. So we're going to find the dimensions for the following. So in the first one, we have to count the number of rows. Those go across. So we have 1, 2, 3 rows. So that is going to be a 3. So we have 3 rows by, and then we count the number of columns. Those go up and down, and we have 2 of those. So we're going to have a 3 by 2 matrix there. In matrix B, we count the rows going across like that. We have 2 of those. And then the columns go up and down, just like the columns in Greek architecture. In matrix C, we have 2 rows, obviously, 3 columns. Matrix D is a little complicated. We actually have 4 rows and only 1 column. So in the next one, it says for matrix B, what is in the second row, second column? And so you are going to look there and you're going to find that entry. And so if you look in the second row and the second column, there's the second row, second column, that's going to be 5. And then for the next one, it's written in a little bit different form. So that's saying for matrix C to find that entry that's in that spot. So when you look at matrix C, you're going to be looking for what is that value that's going to be in that third row, second column. Well, we don't even have a third row, so we don't have one of those. Now, if it has said matrix C and it said 2 sub 1, that means the second row, first column. And so that's going to be -1. All right, because that's in the second row, first column. That's the entry right there. So for the next part, we're going to be looking at how to add and subtract matrices. So to be able to add and subtract matrices, we have to have the same dimensions for each matrix. Matrix A is a 2 by 2 matrix. Matrix B is a 2 by 2 matrix. Matrix C is going to be having 2 rows, 3 columns, and matrix D is going to have 2 rows, 3 columns. So I can add matrix A plus B. All we do is add those corresponding entries. So in that first row, first column, we have a 4 and a -6. So we're going to add those 2 values. We get -2. In that next spot, we have -1 plus -5 is -6. 6 plus 7 is 13. And 3 plus 3 is going to give us 6. And so that's all we're looking at is what are the values that match up in those arrays. If we do A minus B, it's the same thing, but we're going to subtract the entries. So we have 4 minus -6. So 4 minus -6 is 10. Then we're going to have -1 minus -5. That's going to give us 4. We're going to have 6 minus 7, -1, and 3 minus 3 is 0. Now they're asking us in part C to add matrix B plus C. Well, matrix B is a 2 by 2 matrix, and matrix C is a 2 by 3 matrix. So therefore, since they don't have the same dimensions, it can't be done. CBD can't be done. Lastly, they're asking us to do D minus C, so matrix D minus C. But this one, we're going to show you how to do it on the calculator. So what you have to do is you've got to find the matrix key on your calculator, and that's going to be located on your calculator above the x to the -1 button. And so you're going to have to go to that to get to matrix. So to get to it, since it's in blue, we're going to have to do second. So we're going to go up to second matrix, and we're going to go over to edit because we want to edit the matrix. And then we're going to go down to matrix D because we're going to put it in the right spot, matrix D. And at this point, we can just hit enter. And now we can start editing it. And so to edit, I'm just going to show you one more time how to do that. We went to edit, we went down to matrix D, and then we put in the dimensions, and it's already in there correctly. It's a 2 by 3 matrix, and that's what's already in there. So we can just arrow over or push enter. We put in our numbers, 9, -8, 1, 0, -5, and 2. Okay, and once we're finished, we now have to quit. You don't want to clear, you want to quit. So to quit, you have to do second and mode. So you want to do second mode to quit. Don't hit that clear button or else you're going to clear out your matrix. So we want to now put in matrix C so that we can subtract those two. So we're going to go to second matrix. We're going to go over to edit. We're going to go down to matrix C. We're going to push enter. We're going to look at the dimensions. It's a 2 by 3 matrix. We're going to put in those values. Already in there from another class, but just go through, put those in. And then once we have them in, remember, don't push clear or you're going to clear out your matrix. You want to quit. So second mode to quit. And so now we want to be on our home screen. We want to make sure we have a clean home screen. So we're going to push clear, make sure it's all clean. And after that, then we're going to go back to matrix. We're going to go and get those matrices now. We want matrix D first. So we're going to do matrix D minus, and then we're going to go back and we're going to get matrix C. And we just want the name of it. So we go to second matrix and we're going to go down to C. And we push enter. And once we push enter, we're going to get those answers. And so we just jot down that matrix. That's going to be our solution to D minus C. Now, guys, of course, it would have been faster just to do that, just, by subtracting and making sure we put D first. It would have been a lot faster to do it that way. But there are some things we're going to do later that just would be much easier done on the calculator. So you can make that choice. On your homework, maybe do half of them by hand and half of them on the calculator. You want to be able to do it both ways. The next thing we're going to look at is going to be a scalar. So a scalar is just a number that's out in front of a matrix, and it's just a multiplier for the entire matrix. So this is called scalar multiplication. And so all that's saying is with that 2 by 2 matrix, every single entry is going to get multiplied by -5. So we're just going to have to multiply each of those values by -5. After we do that, we're going to get those answers, every single one of them. So we're going to have -10, 5, -15, and -20. Okay? So that's called scalar multiplication. We're going to go back now and we're going to look at matrix A. So if it's written like that, that means to do -2 times matrix A. So we would have to have a matrix to look at. Well, there's matrix A. And so if we're going to multiply that by -2, we'll use +2 instead. So by +2, we're going to get those answers right there. That's another way of writing scalar multiplication. Okay? All right, so that was how we add and subtract and do the scalar multiplication. I'm going to do the multiplying matrices in another video, so you'll need to click on that. Okay, guys, so looking at how to multiply matrices, we are going to have columns of the first matrix. They must match the number of rows of the second matrix. We need to match up and multiply each entry of the row of the first matrix by each entry of the column of the second matrix. Then we're going to add those products. In order to be able to multiply matrices, the number of columns of the first matrix must be the same as the number of rows of the second matrix. That's really important. That's why we said that twice. So if a 2 by 2 matrix is multiplied by another 2 by 2 matrix, here's what we're going to get. So what we would do is we're going to take the first row and multiply it by the second column. And it's like you're matching them up. So that A sub 1 is going to get multiplied by that A sub 1. And then we're going to add that to the next one that we get. And we just keep going in this kind of process. So we go across and then down. And that's going to tell us what values would go in that first row, second column. Does that make sense what we're doing there? And then for this spot, we're going to have to be using the second row of the first matrix and the first column of the second matrix. And then on the second one, we're using the second row of the first matrix and second column of the second matrix. So that rule is written out there for you, but it's going to be much more helpful if you just kind of watch me do it. All right, so I'm going to multiply these two matrices. So to do that, I'm going to have to use the first row from the first matrix, and I'm going to have to use the first column from the second matrix. But first I have to check the dimensions. So we have a 2 by 2 and a 2 by 2. Those middle numbers there must match because the number of columns in the first must match the rows in the second. So we're going to end up with a 2 by 2 matrix. So to figure out what's going to go in that first spot, I'm going to have to use the first row in the first column. Okay, so watch what we're going to get here now. So on this first value, I'm going to do 1. I'm using that first row in that first column, so I'm going to do 1 times -2 plus 2 times 0. And when I do that, that's going to be -2 is going to be my answer. Now that next one right there, that next value I'm trying to find, that's in the first row, second column. So from the first matrix, I have to use that first row. And from that second matrix, I'm going to have to use that second column. And again, I have to match them up. So I do 1 times 5 plus what I get when I multiply 2 times 6. So it's going to be 5 plus 12, and that's going to be 17. All right, moving on to the next spot. Use a different color here to help you see it. That's in the second row, the first column. So from my first matrix, I'm going to use that second row. And for my other matrix, I'm going to use that first column, because that's in that second row, first column. So I'm going to do 3 times -2 plus 4 times 0, and that's going to give us -6. For that last spot, that's in the second row, second column. So I have to use the second row from the first matrix and the second column from the second matrix. And so that's going to give us 39, because we have to do 15 plus 24. All right, checking this one, I have to see what the dimensions are. So I have a 2 by 2 matrix multiplied by a 2 by 1 matrix. And now those middle values have to be the same, because that column must match the row from the second one. So we're going to end up with a 2 by 1 matrix. 2 rows, 1 column. So that first one there, that first entry, that's in the first row, first column. So I have to use the first row, the first column. And I'm going to have to do -2 plus 2. So -2 plus 2, -2 there, 2 there, that's going to give us 0. All right, on the next one, that's in the second row, first column. So we're going to have to use that second row from the first matrix in the first column, the only column from the second matrix. So -6 plus 4 is going to give us -2. Okay, checking on the next matrix. Check the dimensions. So on the first matrix, we have a 2 by 3 matrix, 2 rows, 3 columns. And on the second one, we have a 3 by 3, 3 rows, 3 columns. So mark out those middle ones. Mark out the 3s in the middle. And we're going to end up with a 2 by 3. So those match. So we're going to have a 2 by 3 as the resulting matrix. So I'm going to have to find that first spot. So we have all these different entries. There's the first row, first column. We use the first row, first column. We do 15 plus 1 plus 10. So 16 plus 10 is 26. All right, let's find the next one. That's in the first row, second column. So I'm going to have to match these up. 5 minus 2 plus 0. Or sorry, 15. No, I was right the first time. 5 minus 2. And then plus 0. That's going to give us 3. Now, we're also going to look at how we can put these into our calculator to check our answers. Let's say we just want to do this whole multiplication on the calculator. So we're going to have to put in our dimensions. Our first one is a 2 by 3. The second matrix, we'll have to use a different one. Let's put in matrix A first. It's going to go 5, 1, 2, 2, 0, 3. So there's our first matrix. Okay, and now we're going to put in that second matrix. Now I have to put that one in a different spot. I can't use matrix A again. So I'll have to go over Edit, go down to matrix B. This is a 3 by 3 matrix. I'm putting that in. Just typing that all in. And so now we have our matrix A in and our matrix B in. So now we have to make sure we quit. We want to clear the screen so we have a clean screen to work with. And now we're going to go back to our matrix. We're going to go to get the name, matrix A. And we're going to multiply that by matrix B. We just need to get that name. And so now we're going to check our first two entries we came up with, and then it tells us what the other ones would be. So we're going to get 12, 21, 2, etc. Okay? So you will need to be able to multiply matrices by hand on your own and on the calculator. You need to know how to do both. But the calculator, of course, on those larger matrices is very helpful. So let's look at letter D now. It says state the dimensions, explain why the matrices cannot be multiplied. Well, that first matrix is a 2 by 3 matrix. So we have 2 rows, 3 columns, 2 by 3. The second matrix is a 2 by 2 matrix. And so we have to have the same number of rows on the first one as we have, the same number of columns on the first one as we do rows on the second one. Those middle values must be the same, and they're not. See how if we started multiplying them, we wouldn't even have enough to even be able to multiply. See that? -2, and then +8, and then what do we do with the last one? We don't have anything to match it up with. So that's why it has to go that way. So we would say those two must match, and if they don't, then they cannot be multiplied. But on this one, we could multiply them because those two matched. All right, so now we're just going to try to find certain values here on this problem. We're just going to try to find A, B, C, and D. So when we're just trying to find this letter A, that letter A, we're going to have to do, that's in the first row, first column. So I have to use the first row for my first matrix and the first column for my second matrix. So to find A, it's going to be 0 plus -4 plus 4. And so A then is going to have to be 0. To find B, B is going to be in that second row, second column. So finding B, that second row, second column, we're going to have to use that second row from the first matrix and that second column from the second matrix. We're going to have to make sure we match them up, and then we're going to have to add them together after we've multiplied each of the values. So you can be thinking about, on your own, what would you get on that? So you would have to do 3 times 3, etc. See what you get. After you get that, see if you can find letter C. You've got to think of what the location is, and then you've got to be thinking of the rest of that. So just double checking your B. You should have gotten 9 plus 2 plus 0. And so that should have given you 11. Hopefully you got that right. Okay, now we're going to find C. So if you're trying to find C, again, that's going to be in the third row, and that's in the second column. So you should have gotten 4 on that, and then for D, you should have gotten 12. Okay, so you should have been using those appropriate rows, always rows from the first matrix, columns from the second one. See how we're using that rows in that column for B because it's in the second row, second column. And then to find C, actually that's showing you how you found A. You had to use that first row, first column. All right, so make sure you understand that. We're going to find that C value that's in that third row, second column. So from that first matrix, you use the third row, and from that second matrix, you have to use that second column. Third row, second column, you match them up. So 6, and then minus 4, and then plus 2. So we had 8 minus 4, that's how we got the 4. All right. So remember on that type, we had to have those matching values. Again, just reviewing that. The number of columns for the first one has to be the same as the number of rows for the second one. And that's because we're always using columns on the first and rows on the second. All right, so if you have any questions, just make sure you let me know.